Okay, so at this stage, we've finished doing our toolpaths operations in Makeracam, and we've exported it, and we're ready to drop it onto the Carvera machine. So I'm going to just briefly chat about how to do that without going downstairs and actually doing it, and then talk about some more advanced techniques at the end of the video, in case you're interested in doing something really above and beyond with this machine, because it's a pretty cool machine. So once you have gone into your path, save all paths, and saved it, assuming that's your plan. You can go downstairs and connect to our IRL IoT Wi-Fi. And the Carveras are also connected to that Wi-Fi. And you can open up Carvera controller. And so when you open up Carvera controller, you'll be greeted with a screen like this. Um, you will first click Wi-Fi and it will bring up machines, one of the machines, and you can click on it and it will connect to that machine and give you some useful tools like stop, and you'll be able to position the machine and ensure that you actually have it. You're connected to the right one and it's working the way that you expect it to. The other thing you can do is click this button down here, upload a file, and you can find in your on your computer the file that you have created. So I think at this point I put it in user, I think I put it in downloads, right? Yeah, fish NC. So there it is, open. And it might barf because I made it so big and so out of what is possible. Okay, yeah. So here we go. We got it. We got the whole operation loaded into our tool that can then actually make it real. And it has not given me a warning that I'm going to do something dumb with this thing. And you can also see all the G code that is going to be run when we do this. So you can sort of step through it and take a look at what's going on here, which is great. Um, if we are actually connected to the machine, you will be able to hit this button right here, which is configure and run. And when that happens, you will get this little pop-up that lets you, one, select the work origin. And you should click this config and make sure that you have selected the proper work origin. So if you look at the bed of the machine, you will see anchor 1 and anchor 2, and there are two origins that it expects to be 0, 0. So you just have to pick the right one, but you need to really make sure that you are at, see it says anchor 1. And if we look at this drawing, this is anchor 1, right? So just make sure that you have set your work origin to the correct 0 points. You want the auto Z probe. So the first thing that this will do is it will load in this little probe that will walk along your board and measure exactly where the surface of the board is. And this yellow light should be off before you start. So you can, I think there's a way to check the battery on this thing in order to make sure that it's ready to go, because it is battery. I think it's battery, or it needs to charge. It's not it has a battery on it and it should charge if it's in this thing. But so anyway, you should be able to use that, but you should babysit it to make sure that it has worked properly. And scan margin, I believe, should actually draw with a little laser the outline of what you are going to cut so that you know that it's going to be on the material. So you can potentially put that on or not. And you should definitely use auto leveling. So just basically check all the things and make sure that your origin is set to the right place. And also really make sure that you have put down, a thin little piece of spoil board of some kind and double-sided tape to hold your board down and make sure that it's fixtured pretty well and that nothing is going to hit it when you run your actual job. So, be smart about how you put the stock into the machine and make sure it's not going to mess up. Once you hit go, it will automatically grab the tools that it needs and it'll do all of the passes that it should do. So it's a pretty amazing thing to see in action. So that's like the basic quick intro to this thing. It's really a pretty simple set of tools and software. If it messes up or breaks or you see something you don't like, immediately stop it. And then you can go into this manual control mode and move the tool away, pull out the stock, reset, and figure out what you did wrong and try again, right? So definitely babysit your job so that you can yeah, so that if anything goes wrong, you can hit the stop button and move it up and down and around. And there's also a stop button on a physical stop button on the machine if you see something going wrong. So, and here's some tool, this little dialogue to move the thing around. Okay. You can also control X, Y, and Z here. So I would encourage you before you even start the cut to just type in some numbers here that are slightly different from whatever the number is reporting and see which way it moves so that you're totally confident in your axes. And if you need to retract the thing from the material, you know exactly which direction to command it and how that's going to work. So it should be reasonably intuitive, but you have your Z, your X and Y, and then A will be if you use a fourth stage. So you're not going to be using that for this. Okay, so that's like the quick intro here. The other thing that I just wanted to chat about really briefly is super advanced techniques should you want to do it. So the Carvera is quite cool in that it also comes with the ability to do a full complex board with solder mask and with pads. And so in order to go from a board, see if we Google Makera or sorry, Carvera PCB, right? You can see, well, let's look at some images. Like you can actually produce a board that looks like this with this tool, which is really, really cool. So what do we see that's different than like the typical thing that I'm expecting you to do, which looks a little more like this? Well, so this board here has this copper. It's engraved out the traces. It's drilled through the drill holes. It's cut out the outline, but then it has applied a solder mask, a green layer over the entire surface of this thing. It has cured that solder mask. It has then gone and scraped off the pads. So there is a tool in the machine, which is a solder mask removal tool, which goes around and can scrape off this green where we don't want the green. And then there is another set of this sort of solder mask that's a white color that then gets painted onto the board. And then instead of removing anything, there is a laser on the Carvera that cures it and goes around and hardens, just selectively hardens these letters and these outlines. So it is possible for you, instead of creating a board like this, to create a board that looks like this. And if you're going to do something like this, we need to export additional layers from our KiCAD, right? We need our silkscreen layer and we need our pads layer. And then we're going to need some additional operations in our CAM tool, right? So in order to properly do this, we would need to trace the pad. We need to do these operations first. Well, we don't want to necessarily cut out the board yet still. That typically is like the last step. So what we would do is contour out the traces, pocket out even pocketing out the holes is something you might wait until the very end to do. So we would cut out our traces. We would then pause the machine and paint on our layer of green or whatever color solder mask you might want to do. I believe, I'm not sure if you cure before you scrub off the pads or not, but so you would probably paint that on. Then we would need a pocket operation on the pads that we add, right? So we need to run this engrave operation to engrave our traces. We stop, we paint on green. We run a pad scrubber operation that scrubs off the pads. We stop, we cure it and make sure that it's solid. Then we paint on some white. We run a silkscreen laser operation to harden that. We wipe that off. And then we finally do our pocket operation for our drill holes and our contour operation to cut out the board. And so there's a lot more steps. And we need to actually pause the machine, get in there, paint on the green and paint on the white and clean it off and cure it in order to do that. So these cure with UV light, and the Carvera comes with a little UV cure tool as well. So let's see if I have that in here somewhere. It's a kind of like little device that so clamps, nice clamps. This probably shows it. Let's see if this shows. Okay, no, watch it on YouTube. Well, let me just find it. So I'll just Google it. Carvera UV cure tool. So it looks like so here is we should have oh no, that's not it. Carvera UV cure. This is it. So this little UV tool goes in the machine and cures the solder mask. So they have some videos to show you how to add solder mask, how to there's a roller to roll it on. You should be careful, not get it on your hands. You can cure it, and this is really taking the boards to a slightly more professional level. So let me kill this. So one good place to look for information about this is Autumn, who was in the class last year's website, forge.autumn.onl. And you can see that her 1.4 class was the switch PCB. And she really dug in hard on how to do more advanced Carvera techniques. And she wrote a pretty extensive guide on what she did in order to focus the UV laser and add silkscreen. And you can see some of her process photos here. So you can see she tried to design a switch. She went through many iterations of this board to make it cool. You can see a final product here of like a blue board with some reasonably precise silkscreen etched onto the surface. So that's pretty impressive. And Autumn also has nicely sort of talked through some of the things that she did and the issues she ran into. So if you're feeling very ambitious, you could try to do something like this for your project as well. Um, and yeah, this is a quite a bit more involved technique to add on this solder mask and get a more professional quality. I will say that generally speaking, it's probably worth just ordering it from a PCB house most of the time instead of going through these steps. And that the raw copper is more than fine enough to do prototyping with, which is what we're doing. We're doing just like rapid, fast prototyping where you immediately can make a board within an hour and test it and see if it works, right? So that's the benefit here. There's diminishing returns for a much more complicated process. However, it's very cool. And you can make your first board very professional looking if you use these techniques. But again, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to export this contour operation just by itself. And then you're going to load that in and run that. And then you're going to have to add your UV cure. And then you're going to need another operation where we import our pads, I believe. So you need to make sure you export your pads. You're going to need to import your silk screen, maybe paste. Let's see, paste. Yeah, so paste is actually the same as what the pads, right? Paste is where we would put solder paste in order to solder the parts on, and that happens to be exactly the same place as where your pads go. So if you bring in the paste layer, again, we would need to move this so that it aligns with the rest of the stuff that we have. I don't know why. Oh. Move, again, bottom left, 0, 0. We need to make sure that it's there. Okay, so now we should be able to see. Okay, well, this has gotten out of whack with the rest of our stuff because we didn't select it all at the same time. So that would be a problem. We need to import this all at the same time and move it all so that it's all aligned properly. But these little things should align, obviously, with these pads that we actually need to expose to solder our parts to. And then we could go into our paste operation and do a pocket operation once again. But this time we would use our solder mask removal tool. And we can choose that, and that will go through and we will delete our corn bit. And that will then go clean off our pads for us, right? So we would have to like export one contour, run the machine, add the mask, scrub off the UV stuff, like cure it, scrub off the pads, add the silkscreen layer with the machine paused, run a laser operation. So that is here, a laser vector operation that we would then need to run based off of our silkscreen layer in order to get that solidified. And then we would go finally finish up with the cuts and everything. So we need to export these paths specifically, and we need to keep track of where we are in our overall process. Okay, so that's just like a little bit of like more detail for if you wanted to go crazy and do some really advanced stuff. And that concludes every possible thing that I can think of as a first pass beginner level intro to taking a KiCAD, getting your KiCAD set up, doing a basic design, doing a basic board layout, and then exporting it, bringing it into our CAM software or shipping it off to a board house. So I hope that's very helpful. And certainly it was very detailed. All right. See you in class.